not so much guitar work. But in terms of songwriting, he says, I think Eddie respected my songwriting. He knew I could write songs, and some of the songs needed a little bit of tailoring, and I think I provided that as well as feedback. I wasn't afraid to speak up about how I felt. So I think really, of all the Van Halen albums, especially with Sam, that one is definitely the most pop polished. Wouldn't you say, Dave?
Yeah, I would agree. That's the one where, I mean, there's the keyboard influence, but they also, it felt like that was kind of like the beginning where it started sounding not so unique anymore. Like, I remember, I think it was Rolling Stone that compared some of their songs to Journey. And so when the songs take on a pop sheen, they kind of start taking on that Journey, that Foreigner, that corporate rock vibe.
That corporate rock vibe.
And I know that's like a negative connotation.
Yep.
And I don't mean it negatively. I just mean it in terms of characterizations of what the song started to sound like. That would really manifest itself more so on the OU812 album, I think, anyway. But this was the start of that, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. And also, Mick said, in regarding Eddie Van Halen, he said he was completely out there, not drug-wise. He just went into a trance-like state when he played. And then when they asked him if he ever jammed with Eddie, he said Eddie tried to teach him how to finger tap, but he said he really couldn't catch on. But they did jam a little bit. And he also said you could compare him perhaps to Bach or Beethoven. He is uncannily talented and driven by a need to express himself in a dazzling way. Overall on the project, he said he was absolutely and completely exhausted by the end of it. But he also said that the band and him were really running against the clock. He said they were late in delivering the album, and the band had a tour book, so there was a lot of pressure. The album came out on March 24th, 1986. It was the first album to go number 1, and he noted that Eat 'Em and Smile went to number 4, and he said it was a pretty intense experience, but we achieved something very special. But he did note that beating David Lee Roth and proving that he wasn't indispensable was very, very telling. What did you think of that?
That was very telling. It was a contest.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all about the music with Ed, but I'm sure they were not disappointed that they had beaten Dave, which wasn't entirely unexpected. But it's not like Dave did poorly either.
No.
His album went platinum. It went to number 4. He had a top 20 hit with Yankee Rose. It wasn't like Dave bombed, but they still beat him, and I guess that's what counted.
I think that's what he was focused on. So now, in regarding David Lee Roth, we heard a little bit from David Lee Roth. He didn't talk at all, but he did address some things in his Soggy Bottom. So in his Soggy Bottom, with cartoon that he draws and designs, and very talented guy in terms of, his lyrics, his singing, and his personality, but also artistically, he's unbelievable. So he did a little anniversary marking the 15th anniversary of him being on radio. Remember the David Lee Roth show? We did a whole episode on that. And he says he had a whole design about it, and he had little things. Why can't you be more like Stern, meaning Howard Stern? Play Nickelback. He's playing ethnic music again, all the different complaints about him, and he incorporated this into the cartoon. He also had the Van Halen logo upside down, and he says, I lasted 4 months. The VH lamp was relit, and people were banging on his door. And then he starts getting into some of the history of Van Halen, but he doesn't really address it directly. He just kind of says, 5 45-minute sets a night, 70 songs. Every nightclub, rodeo, frat house, and road bar in driving distance. If not, we slept in our cars. So everything's sort of like a little esoteric. He, mentions these things. And then he had like a drawing of the 4 guys. But again, the faces are kind of blurred out. It's just sort of, you could tell it's the 4 of them from Van Halen. It says, every penny went into the gas tank or our stomachs. Let's go have a cigarette was exactly that. 4 guys, 1 smoke. Thought that was interesting. A little taste of old Van Halen, touching upon his radio days. What did you think of that, Dave?
Well, I think the Van Halen one was the one that made the most sense. I was able to follow it along because I still need cliff notes when I read those things.
Of course, yeah.
It's tough for me to get into Dave's head.
Yeah.
But it was interesting for him to go back and talk about the old days because he doesn't do that very often
right.
at all. So it's nice of him to incorporate it in a storytelling format that he's comfortable with.
Yeah. Speaking of Dave, his Vegas dates. Now, remember, we went to Vegas, right, over a year ago now, and we were the young age of 50 years old now. Now that we're way into our 51st, we're actually in our 52nd year. We're already turned 51. But remember, Dave, he was doing the week that we were there, where he was not doing it every week. He was doing like 3 shows, the Wednesday, the Friday, the Saturday. We saw the Friday and the Saturday. Then he was supposed to come back in March. And we all know what happened in March of 2020. We had the pandemic. Whatever happened to the rest of those dates? Well, it sounds like that those went from being postponed to canceled, because those 6 shows, which was March 18th, 20th, 21st, 25th, 27th, 28th, are all canceled now. Interesting enough, though, the guy who was doing a residency at the House of Blues at Mandalay Bay, where Dave was doing his residency, Santana was doing it at the same time. Santana restarted his residency. It's very interesting. So it's not like the venue is shut down. The venue is back up. In fact, Santana, who was doing it at the same time as Dave, he started his shows back up. But according to Ticketmaster, Dave is also doing a handful of dates opening for Kiss. And I know some of our listeners were wondering about this, but the weird part is Kiss has this whole tour booked, but Dave is only on 3 dates. I went through this methodically. Apparently, Dave is playing September 2nd in Dayton, Ohio, October 2nd in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and October 6th at Lafayette, Louisiana. Kiss is touring from June 2nd to December 4th. That's a long period, but Dave's only on 3 dates. So I don't know if this is a mistake, but this is directly from Ticketmaster, and Dave is noted on those dates. Dave, what do you think of this?
Interesting. I'm wondering if those were just the holdover dates from the last time, and that's all he was contractually obligated to do, and those are the dates he moved, and he didn't want to do anymore.
I think he had more that he was contractually supposed to do last time.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Very odd.
You know, maybe they just haven't worked out the details yet, and they'll be announcing him as an opening act on other dates. I don't know.
I'm not getting the vibe that he's going out on tour, although he did post that Instagram thing about him getting his new shoes ready. I don't know what the hell's going on with him. He's been so quiet. It's unreal, and we still haven't gotten that album. My God, he released that song. It's got to be half a year ago already. More than that.
Yeah, and he released clips of those songs as part of that online comic book.
Right, but there was just snippets.
So
it's not
we're
like
still waiting.
Yeah,
still waiting.
Very odd.
Still waiting.
Now, speaking of Kiss came out, or they're coming out very shortly, with a new series called Off the Soundboard. The reason why I bring this up is because it's a new bootleg series, and this has happened. I think Bob Dylan did this, the Stones did this, Pearl Jam. The band does their own bootleg series. And it's like kind of a soundboard recording of a night here and there. And what they do is they highlight specific shows that they think fans want. For example, Kiss is launching it with this 2-disc set from Tokyo 2001. Now, any Kiss fan knows it's kind of a rare time in the band's history when the lineup was Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, and Eric Singer. So that was a very short period of time, and a lot of fans wanted that, and that's what they're delivering. So this is something I think Van Halen should consider. You know, quick and easy way to satisfy the fans. It's very simple, and it's a way to preserve their legacy. What do you think of this, Dave?
I think it's a great idea, and I don't think Van Halen will ever do it, sadly. Well, they just, you know, Ed certainly never thought that way.
I know.
And Wolf's doing his own thing, and Alex's heart has to be in it. I totally think they should do it. I mean, I'm willing to bet that, you know, on the reunion tours with Dave, they recorded a lot of those shows.
Oh, yeah.
Not all of them.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I would love it. If I'm a fan of the band, I would love it. Give Kiss a lot of credit for that. I mean, listen, I know they're not idiots and they're financially driven.
Yes.
But I give them a lot of credit for doing that, because not every band does that.
Well, Kiss fans are very hungry, and they want content. So they're always delivering, that's for sure. Now, the interesting thing, if I were to suggest anything to Van Halen, and this is quick and easy. Okay, so Billy Joel did something 40 years ago, and I always thought this was the coolest thing ever. He did an album called Songs in the Attic, and what this was he was at kind of the real height of his fame at the time. He had The Stranger, and he had Glass Houses, and 52nd Street, and all these hits. So his band band was at its peak. And what he did was he took all these album tracks that he really thought were good songs that the band would play on tour, and they really didn't get a lot of attention, but he felt like the band was at its peak, and he recorded a live album, and he put it out, no hits, okay, on the live album. So all those Billy Joel hits that you know are not on that live album. It's all these album tracks, Summer Highland Falls, and Los Angelinos, and Miami 2017, which ended up becoming a popular anthem afterwards, but a lot of these songs, after he put out Songs in the Attic, became more famous in-concert favorite from the fans because of the attention that Songs in the Attic gave it. I think Van Halen would be good to do something like that with the songs that Wolf talked about, like Light Up the Sky and Women in Love and Drop Dead Legs, Dirty Movies, all those different ones that they learned. It might make a nice piece if they did a live album that had all of those different tracks over the course, let's just say the Wolf years, right? The 3 tours that Wolf did. You take a culmination of all those album tracks, none of the hits, the album tracks, and put them out. I think that would make a nice package. What do you think about that?
That is an awesome idea.
Right?
I think Songs in the Attic, I mean, conceptually, great idea by Bill to go back and revisit songs with a great band. So I think you're on to something there. But again, I'm not holding my breath for Van Halen to do that. These are all great ideas you to send to Alex, where he will promptly file them under never.
I don't even think it would take Alex to do it. I just think it would take him to sign off on doing it. But I think if someone were to culminate those tracks together and clean them up, make them nice and crispy, and put them together with some good packaging, that would be a nice Van Halen piece that A, wouldn't cause Wolf to have to go digging through the vaults to try to find someone. B, wouldn't cause Alex to have to record anything or, do anything. This is stuff that's already there. It's existing. I think there's something there. I think you could definitely have a nice project with that, You could at least make one solid album with that for sure. Anyway, moving on to Sam. Sam and the Circle are getting out on tour date. Now, we talked about last time they were doing that Florida tour. There's even more dates. June 1st and 2nd, they're playing the Augustine Amphitheater in Augustine, Florida. In August 12th, they're playing Springfield, Illinois State Fair. And August 21st, they're playing Albertson Boise's Open, and that's in Boise, Idaho. So the Circle is getting out there, man, and I'm curious to see if Sam lets Mike take the mic and do some old Van Halen songs in the set. What do you think? What do you think the chances are of that?
I think he'll let Mike do a song or two.
Yeah.
But I don't think Sam's ego will allow him to have Mike sing any more than that.
Okay.
Because if Mike starts getting bigger applause for old school Van Halen songs,
oh boy,
then Sam's getting for Van Hagar songs. That ain't gonna last too long.
That's true. Sammy also posted on Instagram and Twitter a photo of him and John Travolta, the disco king of Brooklyn, New York. He came to Cabo Wabo Cantina to share some tequila with Sam, and he came when Sammy was performing acoustically with the house band Julieta. And John Travolta said, "My evening with a rock legend." And he posted the photo, and Sammy was all happy to host him there, and they looked like they're having a good time. John Travolta, by the way, sporting the bald, shaved head, Dave. What do you think of that?
He looks good.
Yeah.
I know you like anybody who copies the look that you're doing.
Oh, well, I've been pushing it for years. We're now accepting him as a full-fledged member of the bald community.
See, well, I knew you came first, so I was wondering if you were going to accept him or not.
Oh, of course. Listen, the thing that we like least in the bald community is someone who wears a toupee and they hide their baldness. That's wrong. That's wrong. As Larry David likes to say, if you shave your head, okay, and you're a guy who has a full head of hair and you shave your head, no offense, but you're not exactly part of the bald community. You are choosing to shave your head. That's a style. It's not what God gave you. You see? See how that works?
I see.
So now, Sammy Hagar talked about when Eddie Van Halen died, he fell apart. He was on this weird show called The Celebrity Sleepover, which happens like in the middle of the night on NBC after Saturday Night Live. He says, when Eddie died, I fell apart. It was just such a miracle that him and I hooked up for about 4 or 5 months before that. And he said he really got into some soul talking about doing something next year. And he said that it was very touching to me that him and Eddie got back together. And he said, this is a quote from Sam, this is going to drive you crazy. We wrote some 40, 50 million selling records and some of the greatest songs in rock history. I'm so fortunate to have that and to have Michael Anthony stand next to me on stage when we play songs like Right Now, Pound Cake